So, you've seen the news, you've heard the whispers. Young families across the country are looking at the prairies as a desirable destination to lower their cost of living. And you think to yourself, well, how much cheaper could it actually be to live there? So, today we're going to be looking at the cost of living in Saskatoon, Saskatchewan. My name is Conor Palendat, realtor with Moulin Betcher & Associates, and my contact info is below in the description. So if you have any questions about Saskatoon real estate or the surrounding area, please don't hesitate to pick up that phone, give me a call, email, text, whatever. Let's get into it. Okay, so we're going to be starting with probably the biggest factor in why people around the country are looking at the prairies as a destination, and that's housing. So in lots of major centers in Canada now, I think a lot of people say probably housing prices have jumped the shark, and what you're paying and what you're getting, don't really align or how they should align. So what you can expect kind of renting in Saskatoon is between $1,200 to $2,200 a month in rent. So obviously this depends quite heavily on the type of rental, whether it's you're renting a condo or an apartment or a basement suite or a whole house, depending on your needs. So that's typical range $1,200 to $2,200 a month is not out of the question. Now, if you're in something like a one-bedroom condominium or a one-bedroom basement suite, depending on the area and the quality of the rental, what kind of shape is in. If it's really new, if it's really old, you could be less than that for sure. So that's comparing to say Toronto or Vancouver, where $1,200 might get you a bedroom, not even a full unit itself. That is extremely attractive here, obviously comparatively. And you know what, we are now running into similar problems where there is a rental shortage here. So our government has a subsidy now. If you want to build a basement suite, you can apply for a grant to help with the cost of that. So hopefully that does alleviate over time here. And our prices don't continue to creep up like some of those other bigger markets. When it comes to purchasing a home, so the residential benchmark home price in Saskatoon for January 2024 is $372,800. And that is an increase of 2% from January of 2023. And if we're just strictly talking detached residential housing, we're sitting at a benchmark price of $416,900. So obviously, compared to Toronto, Vancouver, you're going to go, okay, that's crazy. I think we've all seen, the CBC articles and everything about, here's a house in Toronto, it's a decent bungalow, maybe, built in the 70s, a little bit older, and it's touching close to $1 million, right? Which is just insanity. Well, here you can get a well-kept, fairly recently renovated, say 1,200 square foot bungalow, probably, obviously depending what neighborhood, but if you're on the east side of the city, which where a lot of those are, if it's nice, 460, somewhere in there, 450. And that's obviously that same house in a major center would be significantly more. So super desirable, obviously. If you have a good wage and you're moving from a bigger center, the housing here is absolutely way cheaper and way more desirable and able to make work for families or even single people. Who I think single people probably have been priced out the most because they don't have an additional income source. And so I think that's a big thing is, maybe moving to a smaller center like Saskatoon could really be a great idea. Okay, moving on to utilities. So your basic utilities here in Saskatoon, your electricity, heating, cooling, water, garbage, you're going to be in that $250 plus per month. Obviously, depending on what kind of, house you're in, if you're under 1,000 square feet, you're probably going to pay less. And if you're somewhere bigger, it's probably going to be more. So it's heavily dependent, obviously, on size of your dwelling, but also heavily seasonally dependent here in Saskatchewan and Saskatoon specifically. Obviously in the winter, it can get down to -40, -50. So to heat your house in that temperature is costly. The same goes in the summer when it's, possibly +30. To cool your house down, if you have air conditioning, obviously is also quite expensive. So based on your, personal tolerances for how you like your temperature kept in your home, this can be a, quite a big expense, or if you're coming from somewhere where it's very hot and you're used to it, and you don't really need the AC, right? Then that's kind of where your costs can come down a little bit. Moving on to number 3, which would be transportation. So again, we've talked previously about how Saskatoon and Saskatchewan as a whole is extremely car-centric. So again, everything's so spread out. Provincial travel infrastructure is not really there. So within the city itself, though, the bus system is kind of what you're going to have. And so kind of for a monthly transportation pass on there, you're probably in that $85 to $100 range for just, an adult. Students, seniors, kids, those rates are obviously going to be much cheaper as they give you a break there. Single ride, you're looking at about $3 for a single ride, and you usually do get a transfer included on that single ride ticket. So that's what you're going to expect for. And again, city's not all that big, so, time to get to places, is not significant. If you do have a car, gasoline per liter in Saskatoon, you can kind of expect in that 110 to 140 range. Obviously, since COVID especially, and with what's going on in Ukraine with Russia, prices have kind of been all over the map a little bit. Right now, it's at about $1.22 a liter for regular gas, and so it has gotten up, up into that 140-ish range before it's come back down. Obviously, if you're playing premium or diesel, it's going to be quite a bit more. So obviously, we've got a couple Costco's in the city. If you can fill up there, obviously you can make some savings that way, which the lines I've noticed have been quite busy since kind of gas prices have jumped up, obviously. Taxi, kind of your taxi starting price, $4 to $5, and then depending on how many kilometers your destination is, it'll climb there. So kind of keep that in mind. We do have obviously Uber and things like that, but not really a cost-effective way to get around by any means. And number 4 on our list is groceries. So I think groceries is another one where someone would be kind of budgeting. That would be another big cost to them. So an average monthly grocery cost for a single person, depending obviously on diet, somewhere in that $250 to $400 a month range. So obviously if you're eating, say, more red meats and things like that, the price of those fluctuate quite a bit and are usually quite high. And so that's where your increased costs come from. If it's just mostly lots of vegetables, obviously a little bit cheaper. One nice thing, I think, a little bit cheaper than some of the bigger centers. Part of that, obviously, Saskatchewan, lots of farming, lots of cattle. So, say if you shop at a co-op, a lot of that can be locally sourced, and kind of keep some of the costs down that way. Obviously, there's local butcher shops at things too. So depending how creative you get on where you shop, obviously you can make some savings. When it comes to dining out, obviously, I think something, post-COVID prices obviously, jumped up. I'm sure that's not just a Saskatoon exclusive thing. I'm sure everywhere that's the case. A meal at an inexpensive restaurant, so maybe, a fast food place or, say just, kind of a bigger chain restaurant type thing that's not really, you show up, get a table, eat. Nothing fancy. Anywhere in that $12 to $22 range for one person for a meal. We were talking about this the other day. Some friends of mine can't even really eat, fast food nowadays for cheaper than $12. If you're gonna get a meal, something like, Baconator or a Big Mac meal from McDonald's, those are, kind of starting right around that, $10 to $12 mark, and then with your taxes, right? So creeping up. It's really not as cheap as it used to be anymore. And so that's something definitely, like I said, you have to budget for, and is not probably exclusive to Saskatoon. Probably where you might see kind of some savings over big cities is So a meal for two at a mid-range restaurant, you'd be looking somewhere in that $50 to $80 range. So a little bit nicer, sit down, not crazy fancy or anything by any means, but and this is obviously going to be dependent on if you're getting drinks or not, kind of what your tastes are and that type of stuff. But yes, again, definitely getting more expensive. I would say for drinks, you're probably for two people. Expect to be more around that $80 range after taxes and tip for sure. Moving on to number 6. This is something kind of we've touched on briefly in other videos, but all basic healthcare services are covered by a provincial health plan, so Saskatchewan Health, and but you are going to need additional coverage for, say, vision, dental, and prescription medication. So obviously, depending on the plan, how many people are on that plan, costs are going to vary. For a single person, basic Blue Cross plan, if you're young and healthy, is probably going to be in that $50 a month range. Now, to get your health card, depending where you're coming from, if it's out of the country, it could be up to 12-month kind of wait period before you're eligible to apply for that health card. So you are going to obviously want some kind of gap coverage. If you are coming from, say, Canada, just out of province, normally, obviously, if you do need to go to the hospital or something, you would provide your, say, if it's Alberta or Ontario health card, and they basically bill it back to your province at some point, and that's kind of how that would work until you get switched over to, your Saskatchewan health card. If you are in the situation where you are coming from out of country and you are having to apply for that, or even out of province and having to switch over and apply, it can take up to 6 weeks for that application process to kind of make sure it's all cleared up and good to go. Okay, and moving on to entertainment, which I think is another big one if you're moving from, say, a big center or, a different country. Obviously, the entertainment options are going to differ quite a bit. And, in pricing and kind of, obviously, other than your housing and your groceries, another thing is, well, what am I going to do in my spare time for, enjoyment, leisure, that type of thing. So, kind of standard movie ticket, no bells and whistles, a seat, $15. Now, if you're going to be going to, obviously, which I think most people nowadays, if you're going to go see a movie, it's not cheap, especially the concessions. So chances are you are going to want to watch, movie the best you can. So, if you're kind of going for the nice seats, the biggest screen, that kind of thing, $20 to $30 range, somewhere in there, depending. Obviously, we've got Cineplex, which Canadians would be familiar with, Landmark, and some budget options as well. So definitely a city where there are options for movies and that type of entertainment. When it comes to kind of fitness and gym memberships, $40 to $80 per month, kind of for the bigger chains, and I don't think that's going to be much different coming from a major center. So like your Good Life, your Motion Fitness, those types of things, you can kind of expect to be in that range, depending on, I know that some of them have different tiers of membership, you get different perks. So we do have 2 Planet Fitnesses in the city now. So obviously that is going to be significantly cheaper, kind of looking at $12 to $15 a month. So, depending where you live, that also might be an option. And then, we do kind of have smaller local one-off kind of private gyms. And again, they're also going to be in that kind of $40 to $80 a month range. When it comes to concert and events, it's going to depend on the venue and the show. So, we've got obviously Sask Health Center, which is kind of our big, the hockey rink, seats 12,500, something like that. That's kind of where all the major acts would be playing out of. So, and that's going to depend heavily on what their ticket prices are. Now, if it's something like a smaller venue, like a Coors Event Center, which is downtown, you can, concert $20, $30, no problem. So it all just depends heavily on the band for the most part. When it comes to, we've got the Saskatoon Rush, lacrosse, Saskatoon Blades, which is hockey, and Saskatoon Rattlers, which is basketball. So for a Rush game, single game ticket, you're looking at $20 to $70 range. Depending obviously where the seat is. Saskatoon Blades, definitely a little bit more affordable, and team's really good right now. So obviously those line up really well. If it's affordable, the team's good, they're playing well, they're winning. It's exciting. For an adult, you're kind of looking for $30 for a single game, seat. When it comes to the Rattlers basketball, $25 to $85 for a single game seat. Now, obviously, there's packages, season tickets, all the boxes, all that sort of stuff. So, but if you're kind of just looking, I want to go get a decent seat, that's kind of the range you can expect to be paying. And our final kind of pillar here for the cost of living we're going to look at is education. So obviously public education is free for residents. There are going to be obviously some expenses for supplies and extracurriculars. I think that's the same everywhere. Obviously, they don't supply, say, your pencils and your paper and all that. And, if you are, say, playing, say a sport, if there is travel involved, say for, provincial, say track meets or something, there's going to be a bit of a cost to kind of transport. So that is something to watch. Well, when it comes to private schools, we don't have a ton here. Couple maybe around Saskatoon. I would say it's definitely not the norm for kids. Majority of kids are going to go through, the public or Catholic system, which are both paid for kind of with taxes. So, that's going to vary quite widely depending which private school you go to. If you're going to say, Athol Murray College in Notre Dame, which is just south of Regina, for instance, known for being very hockey centric. So obviously if you're going to a private school plus playing hockey, costs are going to be, quite a bit up. But yeah, definitely not the norm, I wouldn't say, for private schools here. When it comes to post-secondary, tuition fees vary obviously depending on the institution and program. In Saskatoon, we have the University of Saskatchewan and Sask Polytechnic. So the Polytech would be more for, kind of trades and those types of things. But so depending, probably anywhere in that $5,000 to $10,000 per year for a domestic student at the university is kind of what you can expect to pay, depending obviously on, your course load, if you're taking a full load, half load, whatever it is, as well as, what you're actually in, if it's arts and science, right? Or if it's med school, it's going to be obviously different. So, but that gives you, a good range. And I think that's something that you still see here. Lots of students from the province, aren't going elsewhere. They are staying here. The U.S. has a good reputation. Tuition's not totally crazy. In a bigger center like, say, Toronto, if you grew up there, maybe you're going out of the city to a smaller school, because it's cheaper. That's not really the case here, which is great because we can keep, kind of our younger population in the city and working in the province when they're done for the most part, which is fantastic. Okay, so that wraps up our look into the cost of living in Saskatoon. So I think that gives you, if you're from a big center or, a different country, a very good kind of comparison to make. And, I know lots of people have been moving back recently to Saskatchewan in general, but also Saskatoon, that had once left and, are saying, how much better it is now. The cost of living obviously is a big part of moving back. But, it is progressively getting there, when it comes to some of those entertainment and kind of cultural, things like the arts and all that. So, I don't think it's kind of seen as, the small town prairie city anymore as much, which is great. So, obviously, if you'd love to make Saskatoon your home, all my contact info is in the description below. So please feel free to contact me if you have any questions about any of the material at all today, or just basic general questions about the province or moving here. Don't be afraid. Reach out, give me a call, email me, text me, whatever. I'd love to talk to you. Thanks for watching today. Don't forget to like and subscribe and tune in for the next video. Thanks.